Our big guest now is the person that Bear Grylls turns to for help, a survival specialist. Megan Hine has done it all. She's been caught in crossfire between tribal gangs in Kenya, chased through the jungle in Thailand by opium dealers, and survived an attack by a pack of lions. And you and I might never go through an experience as terrifying as any of those, but Megan believes the skills to survive can be translated into everyday life, and she's documented her experiences and her advice in a new book, Megan Hine, Mind of a Survivor. A very good afternoon to you, Megan.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on.
It's lovely to have you. Listen, you climbed Snowdon at 3 years old. Really?
Yes. Yeah. It must have driven my parents nuts because they had their child backpack on and I refused to get in it. So it must have been a very slow process up there.
I was going to say it must have taken them all day and maybe a bit longer. But this love of the outdoors, it clearly infected you right from the very start.
It really has. I think it's definitely been an addiction of mine, and I'm very, very fortunate to actually have been able to find a career in it, which sort of growing up, I had no idea that a career in the outdoors actually existed. Sort of, I didn't really realise that you could actually have a career outside of academia. So I've been very, very fortunate to find my path in life.
How many women were doing that when you started doing it?
When I started, I knew of very few. I did various apprenticeships in sort of mountaineering and raft guiding and survival, and I came across very few other women at the time. I think that is definitely changing now, and there's a lot of young women and girls starting to come through the outdoor industry now, which is great. So, you know, in the next decade, those women are going to be up on the top, and we've got some great things to see from those women coming up.
When did you realise that you had a passion not just for the outdoors but for survival skills? What was the key moment growing up?
I think I'd always had it. I remember when we got back from school, I'm the oldest of four, we'd come back from school in the afternoon and I'd do my homework and then we'd be pushed outside into the garden to play, and we'd escape off over the back fence to go exploring in the woods, and it was great. I was like, there was never any pressure on to stay clean and not rip our clothes, which was great. I had a lot of hand-me-downs anyway, so it was okay for me to be running around in the mud and ripping my clothes and things. So yeah, there was gender never came into that, which was brilliant.
But just now, if you go onto our Five Live Twitter feed, you can see why you would want to. And why I agreed to this, Megan, I do not know. The contents of my handbag is on the Five Live Twitter feed at the moment, with the question, could Sarah Brett survive in the wilderness with just the contents of her bag? Megan has had a look at this, and you feel free to laugh at any point, and will tell me later on whether I could make it in a jungle with what's in my handbag. But you can go on and tell us what's in yours. Take a snap of what's in your handbag or what's in your wallet or inside your coat today or in the back of your car that might help you survive in a tricky situation. Do you worry that the love of the outdoors is only really something that's properly instilled in you if you come from a rural community? It's much, much harder, isn't it, if you come from a city?
It is, yes, but I mean, you've seen there's a lot of adventure blogs springing up, stemming from London, which is brilliant. It's obviously people getting excited about getting back into the outdoors and finding themselves in nature, and that's what I was looking at through my book as well. Is actually, you know, what is it about the wilderness that draws us? You know, it is our natural habitat. I don't really believe that we've evolved to live as we do now, and returning back into the wilderness is actually ticking a box in our brains that's is kind of missing from everyday life, and it's great to see that these adventures springing up and encouraging other people to get out. I think what we've got to be careful with is that when we're encouraging other people to get out is that we're actually equipping them with the right knowledge, because at the end of the day, I mean, you see from some of my stories, you know, the wilderness is pretty unforgiving, and to be able to go out safely into the outdoors, it's really important that you've got a good strong foundation of the basic skills like navigation, and that's navigation with compass and map, which is a skill that's actually being lost as GPS and phones and things come in. But if your battery runs down while you're out there, you need to have a backup, and even down to, particularly in the UK as well, where we have a lot of cold and wet and wind, which when those things are in balance creates hypothermia, and I truly believe that the UK mountains are one of the most extreme environments in the world. You know, I spend my life bouncing between jungles and deserts and high altitude mountains, but the UK really is like you can literally experience all four seasons in the space of about an hour. And it's all very well when it's all sunny and you're out in your flip-flops and your trainers, but when the weather comes down, it's really important that you've got those basic foundations to fall back on, so you're wearing the right clothing. There's been a lot more sort of mountain rescue call-outs over the past few years, and I think social media is very much to blame for that.
Why?
In acts of people wanting to get the perfect shots and those exciting, and the need to sort of make your life look really, really exciting, and I think that's the wilderness is a perfect place for doing that and for getting out and finding yourself and building bonds with other people that you're going out with. But like I said, I think it's really important that if you are going to do that, that you do build on the right knowledge bases for going out into that, and you'll get far more out of it as well.
There's a flip side of that, isn't there, is having all the gear and no idea. So how do you, even if you go out, you spend your entire afternoon in an outdoor shop and you spend several £100, you might still not know what to do if you get stuck up snowed and the cloud comes in. No,
it's true. It's so overwhelming when you go into outdoor shops now. There's so many shiny things on the market, and a lot of it is like, what on earth is this for anyway? But I think it's, with those things, there's an outdoor industry that is that's there to help people get into the outdoors and find their footing, and it doesn't break your bank hiring an outdoor instructor or a guide for the day, and that will set you up for life. If you're going to get your computer fixed, you take it to a computer technician. If you've got a medical issue, you'd go to a doctor. So why not hire an outdoor instructor for the day who can instill like the good foundations of your adventuring career, and it will set you up for life. And you've got the knowledge there, and you've got the brain to pick of somebody who's lived it, who's been out there, who's dedicated their life and been through a huge amount of formal training to get into the position that they're in.
Yeah, people listening might say, well, you would say that because that's your job. You want people to employ people like you to do that kind of thing. But the fact is that it's because of somebody who taught you and mentored you at an early age that you developed the skills that have gone on to be a hugely successful career.
Yeah, exactly. And I at a very young age, I was very heavily involved with the military cadets, and it was through that I got a huge amount of experiences that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Through winter climbing in Scotland, at age 14, 15, whitewater rafting, kayaking, all these amazing experiences I had. And I was able to make mistakes in those environments under the watchful eye of somebody who was much more experienced than I am.
Ben Fogle was in the papers recently talking about penknives for kids, and I've spoken to Bear Grylls about this as well, and not sort of cosseting children, but giving them the right tools when they need them and giving them a little bit more space. I think not being quite as cautious maybe as we've tended to become over the years. Is that something that you agree with, that we cosset our children a little bit too much?
I totally agree, but I think it's a really tricky one, and it gives it puts a lot more pressure on parents when they start thinking, oh, am I not doing a good enough job? I'm not letting my child go outside. There's reasons. Parents now are so busy, and they've got lots of other priorities, lots of other things going on. They don't necessarily always have time to go out with their children. But I think it is important. I've done a lot of youth expedition work in the past, and something that particularly sort of over the past 5 years or so became very apparent is that young people aren't necessarily being given enough space for creativity, for initiative, intuition, to be able to develop all of those skills that are so important for life later on. And I think that those are skills that are best learnt when you're younger and your brain's much more flexible and they're not easily learnt when you're older. So I think that is missing, and I think that's where the wilderness, things like organisations like the Scouts, which I'm involved in now as an ambassador. I think those organisations are so important for giving young people opportunities that can then build their resilience through lots of different experiences.
You've had some pretty terrifying experiences yourself. Was the most recent one in Kenya?
It was, yes. Yeah, that was only a few weeks ago. I was working behind the scenes on a show, and myself and actually my partner Stani and another guy, we were rigging a rope challenge across a gorge, which was actually had man-eating crocodiles in the bottom of it a couple of days earlier.
Are there any other kind?
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I was over on one side, and the two guys were over on the other side of this gorge, and I was rigging and taking photos of the rigging that I was doing. And suddenly next to me, it was as if something out of like a Hollywood movie where the sand just exploded next to me and this sort of volley of gunfire went off around me. Dived into this alcove in the rocks and was hiding there for a few moments with the adrenaline pumping, trying to control that.
Wow.
And then I at the time I assumed that they were actually shooting at me. I later found out that we were just caught in the crossfire. But for me, it was then the safest place for me was making the decision. Right, I need to get back over to where the guys are because they're in a bigger cave over there, and from there we can actually get back out to where we'd parked our 4x4. So yeah, I managed to. I ran down, scrambling down this cliff through the water at the bottom, up the other side to join these guys, and spent about 15 minutes hiding in this cave with rounds ricocheting off the roof of the cave above us.
It was a tribal gang fight, wasn't it? What were they fighting over?
It was, yeah. There's a drought going on in Kenya at the moment, and a lot of animals and humans are congregating on the water sources there. And one tribe had stolen hundreds of goats from another tribe, and obviously this tribe had gone to track them down to get their goats back, and firefight had started, and the local rangers had then set up an ambush just above where we were working, and unfortunately it all just swung round to where we were, so we were right in the middle of this gunfight.
So when you are preparing an expedition, you will have people looking at the logistics and the dangers politically, whatever, otherwise, drought that can be caused by situations going on in countries. But sometimes, obviously, it's going to catch you out like that. But just how much prep goes into looking at how politically volatile a country can be when you go there?
So when I'm setting up expeditions to particularly to sort of developing countries, it's really important that you follow the advice from the governments locally and from the British government as well. I look very much into those things, and it's really important to follow what's going on politically with those countries. And you can always be caught out. That was a really unfortunate incident that we were caught in the crossfire there. But it was just so unpredictable. You can't mitigate for everything, and that's why when I'm preparing expeditions, I create this safety net underneath us of how I'm going to get people out if there's a problem. Everything is sort of flawlessly planned because I know once we're actually on expedition, it never goes totally to plan.
No, that's one of the rules, isn't it, really? Is that things will, if whatever can go wrong, will go wrong. And you're a locations expert, aren't you? That's what you've done in TV for a long time, pick locations for programmes like Bear Grylls.
Yes, yeah, that's one of those things I do for various shows on TV, is to go out to look for locations. So yeah, initially we'll be looking at the feasibility of using a country or a location, and then I go out and actually work with local peoples, which is the most incredible thing. Actually, spending time with native peoples and looking at journeys and looking at what maybe they use in country to survive and to move through their environment.
Now, wild animals are even more unpredictable rather than the normal animals. However, I did wonder when I was reading that you were sleeping out in the Namibian desert that perhaps lions could have been a factor. What happened there?
Yeah, that was another one where it couldn't have been predicted. It was really unfortunate. Something I've noticed when I'm travelling, because I spend probably about 11 months of the year overseas on various jobs, and what I've noticed is the world's weather systems are changing and becoming much less predictable. And this one out in Namibia in particular, the area that we ended up moving to, because we actually had to move locations because there was a brush fire. So we actually had to move into a new location. And the area that we moved into, the animals should have migrated a month or 2 months before. And obviously they hadn't, and nobody was really aware of that fact. So I was working behind the scenes on a show there, and we've been living out in the desert for about 3 weeks by this stage. I literally just had a machete and a medical bug, and so I could look after the contributor. During the day, we had a camera operator and a sound guy and a self-shooting PD. And in the evening, they would go to a base camp that was kind of shadowing us along our route. And that evening, the guys were, the base camp was actually out of radio range from us, which was quite unusual. But I didn't really think too much about it at the time. And we got into camp, and we we gathered loads and loads of brushwood, built a big pile of this wood to burn, scraped our little scrapes in the sand to lie on, and built our fire next to it. And when you're sleeping in the outside and you don't actually have a sleeping bag or any form of shelter with you, you get into this amazing routine. So every 2 hours, you wake up and the fire's died down, so you put wood back on the fire, blow it to flame, and then you go back to sleep. And it's this routine you get into very quickly. And that night, I was woken up out of my sleep, and it was as if somebody had jumped out on me, that kind of fight or flight instinct. And I rolled my head over to one side, and I just saw this huge male lion just outside of the firelight, kind of patrolling backwards and forwards. And it was kind of like,
Yeah, just a bit. I mean, honestly, what goes through your mind when you see a lion feet away from you and you have pretty much nothing to defend yourself with?
Well, certainly, like the initial thoughts is rather a lot of swear words go through your head, and then having to wake. I woke up the guy I was out there with, and I mean, it was just great. Like, this is like really sort of like hit home for me, like how important like routine is, and how important preparation is in these situations like this. And yeah, we gathered loads and loads of brushwood to burn throughout the night, which then kept it. Had enough then to keep the fire going, because if the fire had died down, we might have become prey to this male lion and the two females who later joined him. But it's a weird kind of out of body experience. I suppose I've become, I guess, because I've had a lot of situations like this, is that I'm very good at separating out my emotions because I have to deal with that situation at that moment. And I do remember very clearly, like, seeing like the muscles of these lions like moving and just thinking, wow, they're really beautiful. Yeah.
But they didn't attack you.
No, they didn't. No, thankfully not. No, I mean, we were ready. I mean, I had a machete and a knife, and then the guy I was with had a knife. And it's like you're ready to fight for your life. But
what do you do? Do you stare them down? Do you back away? Do you just get as close to the fire as you can? What do you do?
So we built up the fire. I didn't want to burn too much wood too quickly, because it burns very quickly. The wood out there is so dry that you burn through it very, very fast. So it's just keeping enough to keep the firelight there. And we kind of back to back either side of the fire. And it was just kind of like, there was very little talking between us, but it was just kind of this real camaraderie of, right.
Pure instinct is taken over though as well, I imagine as well. You said about panic there, and how panic is your biggest enemy, because it's, you lose your focus, you lose your concentration. You even had the presence of mind not to panic when you were bitten by a scorpion. How did you manage to keep calm in that moment? And why? What was your thought process at that point?
I was quite young at the time. It was the first expedition I'd worked on, and I was working with my boss at the time, and I was moving a tent. I had been packing away these tents of the clients. I was moving into the back of a Land Rover that we'd got on site, and a scorpion dropped off at the bottom and fell onto my ankle, and it stung me twice on the ankle. And it was just, I had no idea like how poisonous it was, whether it was deadly or not. But I was like, in my head, I was like, right, I just cannot panic, because that's going to make the blood go through my veins a lot quicker, and it'll take any poison to my heart much faster. So it was just a logical thought process. So when I actually found my boss, and I was like, I've just been stung by a scorpion, he didn't believe me because I was so calm.
You were probably less calm on that chase in Thailand when you were leading a small group through the jungle and you stumbled across an opium farm, and suddenly the guards were upon you, fully armed to the teeth with AK-47s, and started chasing after you. And in this situation, it was different because it wasn't just you having to look after you. There was other people that you had to look after.
Yes, I feel that responsibility a lot more when I have other people. In my own time, I will take risks that I wouldn't take when I'm out with clients. They've handed over the responsibility of their lives to me, and that is an incredible responsibility to have. So in that situation, we would we were filming a guy who was sort of moving through the jungle environment as a survival show, and as we came up, it was suddenly into a clearing, and my brain took a few seconds to actually sort of recognise what was going on, because I really didn't expect to see a clearing there. It should have been primary jungle, which is what we'd been hacking through for the past few days, and it took my brain a few seconds, and then there was a shouting. I mean, thankfully the one of the guys was over the other side of the field, so it took him a little while to actually clock on to see us, and we actually had a bit of a head start on them, which was great.
But a 4-hour chase ensued. There must have been points during that where you thought we might not make it out of here.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's trying to separate out your emotions so you're not focused on that. Yes, my priority was to get myself and the team that I was with out of that situation and to keep moving. And you know, one of the camera operator wasn't necessarily as fit as the rest of the team, so it was then being able to push them through and get them through. And if you've ever been to the jungle terrain is really, really awkward to move through. It's incredibly steep, it's very slippery, there's a lot of trip hazards, a lot of very prickly stuff as well. So my brain is just hyper aware of what's going on around us all the time.
Did they give up in the end?
They did, yes. Yeah, eventually we were hiding under a fallen tree, and yeah, they just disappeared, thankfully.
Has there ever been a moment, Megan, where you've thought, I might not get out of here alive?
Yes, yeah, I've had moments in the Alps. I was living out in the Alps for the past 10 years, and I've had quite a few experiences where you've had moments where it's just been like, actually, I don't know if this is what way this is going to go at this moment. But I think in those situations, I don't really think about it. I do what it takes to get through that situation. And it's afterwards, then I analyse the situation and then have breathing space to actually, analyse what I did in that situation and what I could do better next time.
A lot of people listening at home today would be forgiven for thinking, well, why don't I just stay at home? Why would I want to go out and get myself potentially into a life or death situation? Why?
Well, I don't think going out...
I know you don't do it deliberately, but it does happen.
It does, yes. But then I am working at what a lot of people would consider the extremes.
Yes,
if you're
true.
going out for a walk on, in Richmond Park, I really hope that you don't end up in a life or death situation. But you should, it's about going out and pushing your own limits and finding your own boundaries, because I think there's something very much about going into the wilderness that helps build your confidence and helps build your resilience through lots of different experiences that you can then take back to everyday life as well.
You're listening to Megan Hine. The book is called Mind of a Survivor. We were talking about the different experiences that you've been through, but actually one of your toughest ones happened after you got Lyme disease at home here in the UK. How did that affect you?
I think, it's quite a hot topic in the press at the moment. I know there's quite a few sort of big celebrities that are battling with Lyme disease. Lyme disease is caused by tick bites. Not all ticks carry it. It's kind of Russian roulette. And initially, I developed a bullseye rash on my hip. But I was off. I had a month off, and I went off climbing in the Alps. And I knew what I had. I just didn't realise how serious it was. I didn't know enough about it, so I kept climbing, and I forced it into my central nervous system, which then took about 10 months to get it back out again. And Lyme disease has a breeding cycle every 4 weeks, and that fourth week you feel horrendous. You get brain fog. It affects you physically, aches. I had Bell's palsy in my face, which is where
goodness.
your face becomes like paralyzed.
Paralysed, yeah.
Yeah, and it was pretty horrendous. It's the closest I've been to suffering like from severe depression and things, and it was affecting my physicality, and it really made me question my identity as well, because up to that point in my life I'd seen myself as a climber and a mountain biker and an outdoor person, and that's how I identified myself to myself, and suddenly being faced with my own mortality, I suppose, was quite a big challenge to overcome. And it took me a couple of years afterwards, actually, once I'd finally got rid of it out of my system. It took me a good couple of years to get my energy back up to where I am now.
And mentally, it's clearly expanded your mind a bit, and you've had a long, hard look at yourself, if you like, and come to terms with some things. So how has it changed you as a person?
It was made me much more appreciative of what my body and my mind are capable of doing and of overcoming. Up until that point, I suppose, the feats that I'd achieved, the things that I'd done for myself or with clients, I'd taken for granted to some extent. So it was a really good wake-up call to never take things for granted. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Is it more mind over physicality then when it comes to survival?
It totally is. I mean, obviously, to every sort of element of survival, there is a physical side of it. But I think mostly it does come down to the psychology and having the right mindset, and creating resilience, and drawing on life lessons from other experiences that you can then put into the situation that you're in at that moment.
So it can be taught.
I really believe it can be taught, and this is what I was looking at in my book, Mind of a Survivor, was actually, can people learn those skills? Because what is it? Why is it in survival situations, when you read about them in books and in magazines, why do only a few people make it out alive? What is it about those people? And those traits that they have, can other people learn them? And I truly believe they are. I think we're all born with these traits, like creativity, initiative, all of these different traits that build up resilience. I think that we're all born with them. It's just how you develop those and the experiences that you're exposed to that allow you to develop those skills. And I think they're things that you can actively learn. They're not going to be easy traits to learn, but they are things that everybody is capable of learning.
Well, just on a basic level, and I'm kind of springing this on you because I haven't prepared you for it, but if people can't afford to employ an outdoor expert such as yourself to help them learn about these things, what would your tips be for somebody who's just at home now and hasn't really done anything quite like this, but could actually develop their mental resilience quite well if they just had a bit more outdoors experience? What would your tips be to start off gently?
So it'd be to get outside, to get out and explore. There's plenty of clubs that are available. There's climbing clubs, mountaineering clubs that you can join. The Scout organisation, Girl Guiding, all of these organisations offer amazing opportunities that will give you that immersive experience. Finding like-minded people to go out with as well, maybe people who've got more experience that you can share those experiences with, is really important. And not jumping in too deep to start with. Taking it slowly, get out. If you've got children as well, I get this email quite a lot of I'd love to be able to take my children outside, but I don't know how to take them outside. I don't know what to do with them. Well, let your children lead. Children have got the most amazing imagination. So go out, go with them, follow them, and let them lead the experience. And, if they're asking questions that you don't know the answer to, create some imaginative story around it, because those are the memories that I remember most from being a child.
Yeah, me too, actually. I was very, very fortunate, though, to grow up in the countryside. I think that's why I developed it. OK, looky here, moment of truth. The contents of my handbag and whether or not I could survive in the wilderness with those. If you want to go to the BBC 5 Live Twitter feed, do so. I'm going to remove it after this particular interview. So, Megan, what's in there and what would help me?
This is an awesome bag. This is really exciting. You've already got, so the priorities of survival, most people, if they watch the adventure shows, would know fire, food, shelter and water. And you can tick off some of those. So you've already got a fire there with your lighter. So you can make fire. And even when the lighter runs out, you can just keep a hold of that lighter. You can still use the flint and steel inside that.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
OK, so you could spark that wad off a stone or something. No,
you've still got the spark. You've still got the striker
the spark,
inside.
Of course, yeah. OK, gotcha.
Cock.
Wow, this is like 101 survival for me. Go on, keep going.
You've got your phone can be used for a lot of different things. Obviously, don't go breaking your phone if you're going to need it. So
Yes.
So obviously you've got your phone there. So if you're in a survival situation, if you found yourself lost in the wilderness, then give somebody a call if you've got signal. If you're 72 hours later and you're still out there, then you can break up your phone. You can take the battery. You can use in there. I see you've got your chewing gum wrapper. You might be able to use the chewing gum wrapper or one of your bobby pins to hotwire the battery in your phone. You've got the screen of the phone as well. You can use a signalling mirror. There's a speaker in your phone. It's got a little magnet in it. You could use your
Wow.
You can use your paperclip in there to create a compass as well by magnetising that, which is amazing. I love your eye patch. What is going on there?
Well, this is the thing that I couldn't believe it. Joe, who I work with, said, just dump your bag out on the desk there and I'll take a photo of it and send it to Megan. So I did exactly that and found that my child's pirate eye patch from the weekend when we were in a parade in our village is still in there, complete with its skull and crossbones motif. It is wonderful.
But that is awesome. I think this is something that's really, really important, is to have morale boosters as well. Life is serious enough. Like, you need to be able to find bits that you can laugh at, whether it's at yourself or whether it's at, these items. It's like, if that makes you feel like a badass, then put it on. And once you're bored of it, you can then use it as a catapult.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Megan. Listen, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you and really enjoyed reading the book and about your experiences. Look after yourself and hopefully I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The book is called Mind of a Survivor and it's by Megan Hine.
On digital and online.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
bbc.co.uk/5live.